I am Salvador Dali. Do not let anyone tell you they know me or understand who I am. A man is a man, not what is said of that man. I was born in an attempt by my parents to substitute the void left by my predecessing brother. I was 3 years old and we shared the same name. And on my 3rd birthday, my parents brought me to his grave and told me I was his reincarnation. If my mother had been singularly responsible for this idealist infection, I would have thought nothing of it. But my mother so firmly believed that I was my brother's second coming. The premature loss of her child led my mother to dote on me, to wrap me in affection and allow me every indulgence. I worshipped her. She was the first muse to ever bless my life. I knew that the moral values of her saintly soul were high above all that is human. I have never met a woman who so completely dedicates herself to her children, not only taking care of them, but distracting them and spoiling them. I especially remember the days when she would make me crowns and costumes to play out my fantasies. My Salvador always said he wanted to be Napoleon. One day we were out on a trip, and we were so tired that we could not even walk anymore. So I grabbed a piece of paper and I folded it into a cap, placed it on his head, and I told him, "You are Napoleon." And immediately he became inspired. Salvador mounted a reed in the manner of a horse and started climbing up a very steep hill. And at the top of the hill, Salvador did not once fall off of his winged Pegasus, despite the intense fatigue that he undoubtedly felt. His winged Pegasus represented his fertile imagination so beautifully. Ideas, once formed in your brain, acquire so much strength that even your physicality represents it. And nowhere on earth flooded my brain more than our estate in Cadaqués. I was 8 years old, and on my first visit, I spent 15 days on this farm. Not for a single moment do I stop contemplating with intensity the lights and the clouds, the seas and the beaches. The white calm of these sterile afternoons is forever set in my soul, which reflects the structure of the rocks on the sea. There is no doubt that the lights are expanding my brain, and so are the lights all around me. I had completely reinvented myself. I decided I was an impressionist painter. I carefully take the lights, I look for them, I search for them, and I carefully bring them back to the canvas to elaborate on them yet again. The colors with which he worked had to be the best, the same as the fabrics and the brushes. With a unique instinct, he knew exactly what to ask for and what suited him best. But he always seemed absent of what it might cost. I became more alone and more unique. The more occult I made myself, the more I was noticed. For that matter, I began to exhibit my solitude, to take pride in it as though it were my mistress, whom I was cynically parading. In the earliest days of my schoolings, I was the only child who would not play, who would not talk with anyone. Indeed, I was becoming more and more used to considering myself as something precious and delicate and altogether different from the rest of the ragged children that surrounded me. Yes, he was stubborn as a mule, but he was also sentimental and affectionate. He could not help it. His brother and he resembled each other like 2 drops of water with different reflections. My Salvador's had the unmistakable glow of genius. My life was a constant and furious affirmation of my growing personality. Every every hour was a new victory of my ego over death. I wished to rest assured of myself that I was not the dead brother, but I was the alive one. I am, after all, the Salvador that lived. With death, I would never compromise. The death of my mother was the greatest blow I had experienced in my life. I worshipped them. The death of my mother seemed to me like an affront of destiny. A thing like that could not happen to me, could not happen to her or to me. With my teeth clenched with weeping, I swore that I would one day snatch my mother from death and destiny with the swords of light that one day would violently gleam gloriously around my name. Work. Work, Salvador, for if you were endowed with cruelty, you were endowed for work. In the course of my everlasting and exhausting grief and solitude, my eyes would untiringly follow the vague irregularities that I would see in moldy silhouettes. And I saw rising from the chaos, which was as formless as clouds, progressively concrete images. Concrete images that became endowed increasingly more and more with realistic, precise, and specific personalities. These are your tools as much as your brush and your pigment. You cannot be civilized until you learn, and to learn is to know where you belong between your art and your world.
Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention! Kingdom for a stage, Dali to act, and monarchs to behold the swelling scene. Then should the warlike Dali, like himself, assume the port of Mars, and at his heels, leashed in like hounds, should famine, sword, and fire crouch for employment. But pardon and gentles all the flat, unraised spirits that have dared on this unworthy scaffold to bring forth so glorious an object. I always did things a little differently, but always without knowing it. Now, having finally understood the exceptional side of my pattern of behavior, I began to do it on purpose. It was only necessary for someone to say black to make me counter with white. It was only necessary for someone to bow with respect to make me speak. I left for Madrid to be admitted into the School of Fine Arts. To be admitted, it was necessary to complete an examination which consisted of creating a drawing from an antique. I set to work, and in exactly 1 hour, I had completely finished my drawing with everything but the shape. With the remaining hour, I did nothing else but admire my drawing. Never had I done anything so precise. It was so perfect. I was admitted into the School of Fine Arts of Madrid with this venture. In spite of the fact that it does not contain the dimensions specified by the regulations, the drawing is so perfect that it is deemed approved by the examining committee. I knew immediately that I could learn nothing from these old professors. How could I, when they had just admitted to my undeniable perfection? I was expecting them to offer me science, rigor, limit. Instead, I was offered laziness, limitations, and approximations. You must find your own manner. There are no laws in painting. Interpret everything you see, and paint exactly as you see it. And above all, put your soul into it. Yeah! Professors.
professors of painting. Fools that you were! These professors called themselves innovators and revolutionaries because all of a sudden they were allowed to paint as they pleased. And they called me a reactionary, an enemy of evolution and progress. These old professors experienced a revolution, and this revolution was French Impressionism. But this revolution was one that I had thoroughly gone through at the age of 12 and was now in full reaction against Cubism. They, in order to reach me, would have to have lived several lives. I came up for my final examination the following year. I was wonderfully well prepared. I stepped up to the platform where the examining committee sat. But an insurmountable feeling of insolence came over me, and to the imagination of everyone who filled the hall and to the examining committee, without hesitation, I stood up.
I am very sorry, but I am infinitely more intelligent than these three professors. And I therefore refuse to be examined by them. You have been weighed in the balance and have been found wanting.
That was the end of my scholastic career. I began now to be the subject of intriguing controversy. Is he mad? Is he not mad?
Is he half mad? Does he possess the qualities of an abnormal but exceptional personality?
Who can say for sure? But after that, the following 2 years, I was ready to fully throw myself into my art. For the following 2 years, I worked on creating art that was my own, art that was truly different. I was working on my ideas and my artwork so that eventually I could take the great city of Paris by storm. My personal life reduced strictly itself to my studies. I needed nothing more. In fact, anything else would have brought me insurmountable displeasure.
This capacity for work always inspired everyone with respect. The fact is that from the moment I arose at 7 in the morning, my brain did not for a single moment pause in the course of an entire day. I even considered my idyllic walks a laborious and enacting labor of seduction of my art. I look around the marble of Paris, and it becomes clear that I am destined, as my name indicates, to save painting from the void of modern art, and to do so in this epoch of mechanical and mediocre catastrophes in which we live. I would for nothing in the world trade places with anyone at this moment. My art had finally brought me to a group of artists that were looking to unlock the full power of the imagination, the surrealists. In order to understand an aesthetic picture, an intellectual and cultural appreciation is necessary, a sort of appreciation in the art. For surrealism, the only prerequisite is a receptive and intuitive human being. My ideas were so often regarded by my closest friends in the surrealist groups as whims tinged with genius. They literally drank my ideas. Dali this, Dali that, Dali everything. Although I realized at once that my new friends would take everything from me. You see, I could unlock the power of my subconscious with systematic, irrational thought and a self-induced, paranoid state. I would create hand-painted dream photographs from the things that I witnessed moments before and after sleep. The subconscious has a truly symbolic and universal language, for it speaks with the universal constants echoed throughout every human being. These constants are the enigma of space, the feeling of death, sexual instinct,
You see, Parisian surrealists wanted to use their art as a reprieve from the violent political situation surrounding World War I. I, however, could not be bothered by such things. and wanted to use my art instead as an expression of myself. I thought it ridiculous to paint anything else other than what I wanted to paint and what my dreams were telling me to paint. I dreamed of Hitler the way that men dream of women. His skin, which I imagined was whiter than white, would ravish me. I painted a Hitlerian wet nurse kneeling, sitting in a puddle. I painted Hitler masturbating. I painted Hitler's face on the side of a mountainous landscape. There was no reason for me to stop telling one and all that to me, Hitler represented the idea of the perfect masochist. A masochist who would unleash a war upon the world solely for the purpose of burying himself. I became preoccupied with this idea. I knew no other reason to paint anything else. He was my living muse. I knew no reason to stop this idea, except for André Breton, leader of the Surrealists.
I am not fine! I am anything but fine! Look at the paintings, look at them! I believe everything you see and hear is talking to you. Something inside you is always telling a story. But you have never been able to foresee the hysterical and preposterous course of your actions, let alone the final outcome of your acts. You're a buffoon, hell-bent on spreading confusion like a complete clown. Conflicted? No! Nuanced? No! Doomed? No! Salvador Dali, the one true king of art, like a too violently seasoned food, you are no longer palatable. You are dying. You know you are dying, and still you are going to have to kill who you are or fall into your grave, grasping onto a character that you never were. Your tragedy was becoming famous. Your muses evacuated. You felt you had nothing left to paint for them, so you indulged them. With trite display windows, you signed menus for money, and you shocked them with violent images. Images so violent that no one would even remember what they had seen after they had seen them. You see a giant black hole hanging above you, like a gateway, like a grave, yes, but it is also a gaping mouth, letting out a silent howl of something foul and feral and primal and real, and it is dragging you in. Salvador Dali, we are here to stop your heart. Do you understand? We are here to make you think, not jolt you with violent images. Who do you think you are? Salvador Dali, the one true king of art, the true surrealist? You have been weighed in the balance and have been found wanting!
We live in a perpetual process. Creation, maturation, cessation. Everything worthwhile ends. This transition took place for me in a place between complete disappointment and complete confusion. Was I really mad? I knew I certainly was not, but then, why had I done this? The isolation, the arrogance, my perpetual conquests over death, everything that I had ever dreamed about, me and everyone, the fruitions of it were standing right there. And still I found myself alone, unhappy. Why has everyone sung the same melody of my madness? If Salvador Dali had already lived and died like my mother so firmly believed, then I had no choice but to breathe Dali into existence. In order to wrest myself from my dead brother, I had to play the madman, the genius. The difference between a madman and myself is that I am not man. One being in the hour of my complete darkness rose in their image, an image comparable only to the serene perfections of the Renaissance. That being happened to be Gala, my wife, whom I had the miracle to choose. She taught me the value of reality in all things. I had become her pupil. She taught me that the man is not what is said of that man, but rather the culmination of all the little things which he uses, his brush and his pigment, all the little things which he allows into his world to create himself. I had become her pupil, and she in return got rid of the cumbersome and sterile weight of my eccentric outbursts. But if my eccentricities were going to continue to fly to the roof, they would not be doing so on their own accord and without my knowing why. On the contrary, it would be I, with the slingshot of my own hand, who would shoot them there myself. Instead of trying to change me like life had planned, Gala succeeded in creating a shell for myself in which to protect the naked hermit of myself that I was inside. In order to survive, she created an image of a fortress so that to the outside world, I was impenetrable. And yet, I could continue to grow old with her. We get to choose our divine sparks, what gives our pictures inner light. Even in the end, on my deathbed, when I got too ill to hold a paintbrush, I still organized the colored watches on the wall. I had to be who I am. I am the Salvador that lived. I am Salvador Dali.